But just on the issue of trust, I really want to ask Dr McGough and Fintan Kelly around, in your opening statements about that, the mandate for Coillte and Bord na Móna, and I'm particularly interested in Bord na Móna and the Diriad Mid-Shannon Wilderness Programme, because again it goes back to trust with the community and just transition. So in Bord na Móna we're ending the peat extraction on that site. They gave a commitment to the community, they were going to give the bog back to them. The community, the local authority, the senior planner all put together a plan for a wilderness park, which would be a win-win for everybody, for the community, for biodiversity, for a carbon sink. And yet now we have Bord na Móna. They've put in one planning application for a wind farm on that site. They lost the judicial review, and now we hear they're going to do the same again. So would the changing of the mandate help in terms of that? You know, and even their plan for that site by not doing that wilderness park, you know, Principle 16 of the National Peatland Strategy, it goes against government policy, even, you know, that the cutaway bogs that flood naturally should be permitted to flood unless there's a clear environmental or economic case to maintain pumped drainage. So I wouldn't mind hearing your views on that, and if you're aware of that particular project. I mean, I was down there at the weekend. It just seems like a no-brainer that we would turn the pumps off and allow that site go back to being a natural environment and lead by example. If we're going to be re-wetting land, it should be, you know, the Bord na Mónas and the Coiltes who should be leading.
Fintan answered most of that, but just to say we very much agree. Like, I mean, Bord na Móna owns a significant proportion of the land. If we're going to ask farmers to take all of these steps, it's absolutely imperative that the state does whatever it possibly can on state land. We really need to lead from the front. In terms of the remit for Bord na Móna, I know Fintan has had some updates on that recently, so I'm going to throw it over to him to answer.
Right, Fintan.
Thanks, Senator Boylan. Yeah, I come from South Roscommon myself, so I grew up looking across Lough Ree towards those peatlands, so I'm very familiar with them, very passionate about what they would bring to the region. I think what it exposes is the lack of a proper decision-making framework and accountability for Bord na Móna. At the moment, we see a lot of cutover bogs being targeted for the rollout of wind farms, and we're strongly supportive of the need for wind farms and for more renewables, but there are certain sites that are more suitable for wind farm development, and there are some sites that are more suitable for restoration, for the development of habitats, for the development of ecotourism. And I think that particular site is one that really jumps out. In previous jobs I would have made submissions and observations and various appeals on that particular planning application, the first wind farm application. So, for example, the northernmost section of that bog is in the winter is full of wintering whooper swans, a protected species under the Birds Directive. The site directly adjoins the Lough Ree SSE SPAs. It's an important flight corridor for migrating birds, white-tailed eagles, etc. Many species that are particularly susceptible to collision with wind turbines. The most southernmost section of the bog, there was evidence for breeding curlew. There was also evidence for breeding merlin. So these are both protected species as well. And in merlin, they're quite rare in the region because of the absence of large areas of healthy bog. So for me, that particular site just points to the lack of, I suppose, accountability and the lack of transparency around how Bord na Móna make decisions around what sites should be used for. And that is kind of one of the reasons that we're kind of calling on the government to review the legal mandates. Bord na Móna's legal mandate was established in 1946 under the Turf Development Act. It's a basic economic mandate. It's totally outdated. It's not fit for purpose in this day and age. And as Dr McGough said, the state really needs to be seen to be leading from the front. We need to get maximum benefit out of these sites in the short term to create us a bit of breathing space to get the proper schemes in place and to mobilise the efforts of farmers on the ground.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kelly.